There is a man in the Bible who was given everything you have ever quietly wished for. Not some of it, all of it. He asked God for one gift, and God was so pleased by the request that he piled every other gift on top of it. Wisdom deeper than anyone who had ever lived or ever would. Wealth so vast that silver became as common as stones in the street. Peace on every border. A palace of cedar. A throne of ivory and gold. And the most beautiful house of worship the world had ever seen. Kings and queens crossed deserts just to sit and listen to him speak. Anything his eyes wanted, he took. Nothing was kept back from him. And at the very end of it all, this man sat down and wrote a single word over the whole of his life. Meaningless. Vanity. A chasing after the wind. How does the wisest man who ever lived end up there? With everything, and empty. His name was Solomon, and his story is the rise and the slow ruin of the smartest man in the world. Stay with me, because the small thing that destroyed him is the same small thing that quietly destroys most of us. And by the end, you will see it coming a mile away. Let me set the scene. The great King David is now very old. The giant killer, the shepherd who became king, is a frail man now, cold beneath his blankets near the end of his days. And when a king grows weak, the vultures begin to circle, even inside his own house. David has a son named Adonijah, handsome, ambitious, used to getting his way. And Adonijah decides he will not wait for his father to die or for God to choose. He simply announces it himself. I will be king. He gathers chariots, horsemen, and 50 men to run before him. He throws himself a coronation feast. But there is a problem. God had already spoken. The throne was promised to another son, a son named Solomon. And when the prophet Nathan hears what Adonijah is doing, he moves quickly. He goes to Solomon's mother, Sheba, and warns her, "If you do nothing tonight, by morning your son will be dead." So Sheba goes in to the aged king. She reminds him of his own promise. "My lord, you swore that Solomon would reign after you." And the old fire flickers back to life in David one last time. "Take Solomon," he says. "Set him on my own mule. Bring him down to the spring at Gihon. Let Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet anoint him there as king over Israel, and blow the trumpet and shout, 'Long live King Solomon.'" And so they do. The oil is poured, the trumpet sounds, and the whole city erupts until the ground itself seems to shake with the noise. And Adonijah, still at his own feast, hears the roar of the city and knows in an instant that he is lost. His guests scatter in fear, and Adonijah runs and grabs the horns of the altar, begging for his life. And Solomon, in his first act as king, lets him live, for now. Soon after, the old King David calls his son close for the last time, and he gives him a charge. Be strong, be a man, keep the ways of God. Walk in his truth with all your heart and all your soul. And then David, the shepherd who became a king, lies down with his fathers and dies. And the crown passes to his son. Solomon takes the throne, and he takes it firmly. The rivals are dealt with. The kingdom is his. But here is what you need to understand about the young man who now rules Israel. He is terrified. He is young. The nation is enormous. And he knows, better than anyone, that he is not ready for this. So early in his reign, Solomon travels to a high place called Gibeon to worship. There he offers 1,000 burnt offerings on the altar. A staggering, extravagant act of devotion. And that night, as Solomon sleeps, God comes to him in a dream. And God says the most dangerous sentence a person could ever hear. Ask what I shall give you. Stop there for a moment. Imagine it. The God of all creation offering you a blank check. Anything. What would you ask for? Be honest. Wealth? Long life? to see an enemy fall? Most of us know exactly what we would say. And Solomon's answer is the reason we still tell his story 3,000 years later. He says, "O Lord, you have made me king, but I am only a little child. I do not know how to go out or come in. Your people are too many to number. Who is able to govern this great people of yours?" And then he asks, "Give your servant an understanding heart to judge your people, that I may discern between good and evil." He does not ask for money. He does not ask for power. He does not ask for revenge. The young king, offered anything in the universe, asks only to be wise enough to serve well. And God is delighted. "Because you asked for this," God says, "and not for long life, or riches, or the death of your enemies, I will give you what you asked. I give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there has never been anyone like you before, and never will be again." And then God does something breathtaking. He says, "And I will also give you what you did not ask for, both riches and honor, so that no other king in all your days will compare to you." And Solomon wakes up. And it was a dream, but the wisdom was already real. And almost at once, that wisdom is put to the test in the most impossible way you can imagine. Two women come and stand before the king, and they are both weeping, and they are both women no one respects. And they bring the young king a nightmare of a case. They live in the same house, the two of them, and each has just given birth to a baby boy, days apart. But in the night, one of the babies died, and now they stand before the king, and each one claims the living child is hers. "The living son is mine," one cries. "No, the dead one is yours," says the other. "The living one is mine." Back and forth, in front of the whole court, two mothers, one baby, and no witnesses, no proof, only two women screaming. There is no fingerprint to check, no test to run. It is one word against another word. It is unwinnable. And every eye in the room turns to the young king to see what he will possibly do. And Solomon says something that makes the whole room go cold. "Bring me a sword." A sword is placed in the king's hand, and he gives the order. "Divide the living child in two. Give half to the one and half to the other." And in that terrible instant, the truth comes screaming out into the open. Because one of the women says, "Yes, do it. If I cannot have him, she cannot either. Divide him." But the other woman throws herself forward. Her heart, the Bible says, yearned for her son. "No, my lord," she cries. "Give her the baby, please. Only do not kill him. Let him live, even if he is never mine." And there it is. The one who would rather lose her son than see him die is his mother. "Give the living child to the first woman," Solomon says. "Do not kill him. She is his mother." Love would rather give a child away than watch him destroyed. Solomon knew that. And in that knowing, he found the truth no evidence could reach. And word of this spreads through the whole nation. And the people stood in awe of the king, because they saw that the wisdom of God was in him to do justice. And this becomes the pattern of his golden years. People came from every nation to hear the wisdom of Solomon. He speaks 3,000 proverbs. He writes songs. He studies the trees, the animals, the birds, the fish. The wisest man alive, at the height of his powers, and the kingdom is flowering around him. And now Solomon turns to the great work of his life, the one thing his father David had dreamed of building and was never allowed to build: a house for God, a temple in Jerusalem. The Bible dates it precisely. It was 480 years after Israel came out of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign. And the scale of it takes your breath away. The house was 60 cubits long, 20 wide, and 30 high. Cedar hauled from the mountains of Lebanon, massive stones cut and finished at the quarry, so that at the building site itself, no hammer, no axe, no iron tool was heard. The house rose in a holy silence. Inside, the walls were carved with palm trees and flowers and angels, and then the whole interior was overlaid with pure gold. Gold on the walls, gold on the floor, gold on the doors. A room that glowed like the inside of a sunrise. At the heart of it, the most holy place. And 2 towering angels carved from olive wood, their wings stretching from wall to wall. 7 years it took to build, 7 years of labor for one house, for one purpose, to hold the presence of God. And when it was finished, the priests carried in the Ark of the Covenant, the golden chest that had led Israel since the wilderness. They set it in the most holy place, beneath the wings of the great angels, and the priests stepped back. And then something happened that no architect could have designed. A cloud filled the house of the Lord, so thick that the priests could not even stand up to do their work, because the glory of the Lord had filled the temple. God himself had moved in, and Solomon stood before all of Israel and spread out his hands toward heaven and prayed. He prayed a prayer of staggering humility. "Will God really dwell on the earth?" he asked. "Behold, the highest heaven cannot contain you. How much less this house that I have built? Hear the prayer of your people," he begged, "and when they sin and turn back to you, forgive them." This is Solomon at his absolute peak. On his knees, before the God who gave him everything, asking only for mercy for his people. Remember him here, because from this mountaintop, the only direction left is down. But first, the glory. Because the years that follow are the golden age of Israel. The wealth that pours into Jerusalem in these years is almost impossible to picture. The weight of gold that came to Solomon in a single year was 666 talents, tons of it, every year. He made a great throne of ivory and overlaid it with gold, with a lion standing beside each armrest. He made shields of hammered gold. His cups were gold. Silver, the Bible says, was counted as nothing in the days of Solomon. Silver, that precious metal, was as common as the stones lying in the street of Jerusalem. That is how rich he had become. And his fame spread far beyond his own borders, until it reached the ears of a queen in a distant land. Far to the south, in a kingdom called Sheba, a queen hears the reports of Solomon, and she does not believe them. So she loads a great caravan with camels, spices, gold, and precious stones, and crosses the desert to see for herself. And she comes to test him. She arrives with hard questions. Every riddle, every problem, everything on her heart. And Solomon answers all of it. There was nothing hidden from the king that he could not explain to her. And when the queen of Sheba saw it all, his wisdom, his palace, his table, the order of his servants, and the temple he had built, the Bible says there was no more breath in her. It took her breath away. And she said, "The report I heard in my own country was true. But I did not believe it until I came and saw it with my own eyes. And now I know. The half was not even told me. Your wisdom and your greatness go far beyond the rumor I heard. The half was not told me." Think of that. The reality of Solomon's kingdom outran the wildest stories about it. This is the summit. A man with more wisdom, more wealth, more peace, and more glory than any king before or since. He had done everything right. He asked for the right thing. He built the right house. He prayed the right prayer. And now, watch how carefully the ruin begins. Because it does not come with a bang, it comes with a whisper. It begins with a single, small word in the story. The word is, but. But King Solomon loved many foreign women. It was the custom of kings in that world to seal alliances with marriage. A princess from Egypt, a princess from Moab, from Sidon, from every nation around. And Solomon took them, not 1 or 2 or 10. He had 700 wives who were princesses, and 300 more women besides. 1,000 women. and each one came from a nation that worshipped a different god. Now here is the thing God had warned about long before through Moses. Do not intermarry with these nations, not out of cruelty, but because, God said, they will surely turn your heart away after their gods. And that is the exact sentence the Bible now uses about the wisest man who ever lived. When Solomon was old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not wholly true to the Lord, his God, as the heart of David his father had been. Read that again slowly. His heart was no longer wholly true. It was divided. This is not a man who woke up one morning and renounced God. This is far more ordinary and far more frightening than that. It is a heart that gets slowly, quietly, comfortably split in two. A little here, a compromise there, to keep the peace, to please the people he loved. He built a high place for Chemosh, the horrible god of Moab, on the hill east of Jerusalem, and for Moloch, the god of the Ammonites, whose worship demanded children in the fire. He went after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. The man who built the most glorious temple to the living God now builds shrines to dead idols in the shadow of it. The man who prayed, "Will God dwell on the earth?" now bows in the smoke of Chemosh. How? How does a man that wise fall that far? He did not lose his intelligence. He lost his heart. Wisdom, it turns out, is not the same thing as faithfulness. You can know exactly what is right and slowly give your heart to what is wrong. And the Lord was angry with Solomon, because his heart had turned away from the God who had appeared to him twice. Twice. God had come to him in person at Gibeon and again after the temple, and still his heart wandered, and so God speaks to him one final time. But this time there is no blank check. This time there is a verdict. Since this is your heart, God says, and you have not kept my covenant, I will surely tear the kingdom from you and give it to your servant. Everything his father David fought to unite, everything Solomon inherited whole, it would be ripped in two. But even here, judgment comes wrapped in mercy. For the sake of your father David, God says, I will not do it in your days. I will tear it out of the hand of your son instead, and I will not tear away the whole of it. One tribe I will give to your son. For the sake of David my servant, and for the sake of Jerusalem, the city I have chosen. And soon the man who would tear it away appears. A capable young official named Jeroboam. A prophet meets him on the road and tears his own new cloak into 12 pieces. Take 10 pieces for yourself, the prophet says, for the Lord is going to give you 10 tribes. The kingdom is coming apart. And Solomon, hearing of it, tries to kill Jeroboam. The wise king, now grasping and afraid, trying to hold back a judgment he brought on himself. And it is somewhere in these late, shadowed years that many believe the old king took up his pen. And he wrote a book unlike any other in the Bible. A book that begins with the loneliest words a rich man ever spoke. Vanity of vanities. Everything is vanity. Meaningless. A breath. A chasing after the wind. Listen to the man who had it all. Take an honest inventory of his life. I built houses. I planted vineyards and gardens and orchards. I gathered silver and gold and the treasure of kings. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I did not deny myself any pleasure. And then I looked at everything my hands had done, and behold, all of it was vanity and a chasing after the wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. This is not a poor man dreaming of wealth. This is the richest man alive telling you, from the far side of it, that it did not fill the whole. He had every answer to every riddle, and he could not answer the one question that mattered. What is the point of all of it? The wisest man in the world had grown wise about everything except the one thing his own life was quietly teaching him. And at the very end of that book, after all the darkness, he finally lands on solid ground. "Here is the end of the matter," he writes. "Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man." It is the very thing he had let slip, the whole heart given to the one true God. He learned it, in the end, the hardest possible way. And then the reign of Solomon comes to its close. 40 years he ruled in Jerusalem, and then he lay down with his fathers and died. And the moment he is gone, everything God warned about comes crashing down. His son Rehoboam takes the throne, and the people come and ask him for one thing: "Lighten the heavy burden your father laid on us." And the young fool listens to his young friends instead of the wise old counselors, and he answers with pride and cruelty. "My father laid a heavy yoke on you," he says. "I will make it heavier." And with those words, the kingdom split, just as God had said it would. 10 tribes broke away and followed Jeroboam. Only the tribe of Judah and little Benjamin stayed with the son of David. The united golden kingdom of David and Solomon lasted exactly 3 generations. And then it was gone. Torn in two, never to be whole again. All of it tracing back to one old king and one slowly divided heart. So what do we do with the story of Solomon? What is it here to tell you? It is not mainly a story about being smart. Solomon was the smartest man who ever lived, and it did not save him. It is a story about the heart, and about how the most dangerous falls are not sudden. They are gradual. No one wakes up and decides to abandon everything they believe. That is not how it happens. It never is. It happens the way it happened to Solomon. One small compromise that felt reasonable at the time, and then another, and another. A heart is not usually lost in a single moment. It is lost in 1,000 small negotiations until one day it is simply no longer whole. That is why the wisest man who ever lived left us this warning in his own book of Proverbs. Above all else, he wrote, "Guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." He knew. He, of all people, knew exactly what it cost to fail at that. He was writing to you with the scars of his own life. And the story does not simply end in the wreckage. Because Solomon asked a question his whole life could not answer. Is there anywhere that everything is not vanity? Is there a king whose wisdom does not curdle, whose heart does not divide? And 1,000 years later, another descendant of David stood in that same land and said 7 words that answer Solomon across the centuries. Something greater than Solomon is here. A greater king, a wiser teacher, a heart that would never once divide, and a kingdom that would truly never end. So take the warning of the wisest man who ever lived, and take it to heart today. It is not enough to be clever. It is not enough to be blessed. Above everything else you guard in this life, guard your heart, and keep it whole, and give it, undivided, to the only one who is ever worthy of it.